Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Blue Sunday here on In the Blue Corner channel. It's great to have you with us this evening. We're in for a bumper program, and as you can see on the screen, we have the wonderful Joe Lutzer up there in Bangkok, Thailand, who's just going to join us quickly for the start of the show, but he'll probably pop his head in at the end of the show tonight. Good to see you, Joe. Hopefully you're well on the road to recovery.
I am, thanks, Vince. Finally tested negative, so it hasn't got
Excellent. me. And, of course, my partner in crime every Sunday night here on Blue Sunday, Steve Khatib. Great to see you, Steve. And I know Steve's got quite a bit to say on the show tonight as we concentrate on the annual general meeting of the Carlton Football Club that was held during the week. We'll be dissecting that in a fair bit of detail tonight. For those of you who may not have even tuned in on Tuesday night on the live stream, we'll certainly do our best to give you the guts, if you like, of what happened and what was disclosed, and maybe even go into certain things that weren't disclosed. But we'll certainly express our views. And we also have a very special guest on tonight, Debbie Pelty, who's been a very staunch member of the Carlton cheer squad and also a very prominent blogger who has got quite a few things to say about the Carlton Football Club on a regular basis. She's going to be joining us because she also tuned in on Tuesday night. So we'll get Debbie's views and she'll be joining us very soon. But in the meantime, Joe, I think we'll open the show by mentioning, for starters, that today is Sunday, the 27th of February, and no doubt a lot of people in the AFL world will know that that is the birthday of the great, legendary Ron Barassi, and he's still with us at 86 years of age. Isn't that a tremendous achievement?
It's good innings, isn't it? I mean, he really made that club in the late 70s, didn't he? When he came, the big shock when he left Melbourne.
You mean in the late 60s? You mean
60s? Sorry, in the late 60s.
Oh, it's actually the mid 60s when he actually came over, but he achieved the ultimate success in the late 60s with Carlton. Yes.
Yeah, it was a big shock at the time. I mean, I was only a young boy, as probably you guys were, but I
heard you were only just about 40 years of age back then.
Well, my pet dinosaur was just about to die, so you know. But but in those days, I mean, that was a really big story. I mean, now people swap clubs. I mean, it's still big stories, but he probably started our greatest ever period of success. You know, 68, 70, 72, 73, and sort of we talk about culture, and I think he really changed the culture of that football club. From, you know, I mean, they were always probably a powerful club, but they went to a real, they sort of went up a level in terms of powerhouse, which, I mean, we really need someone like him now, don't we? I guess.
Well, there's no doubt that, you know, it was the biggest news in football at the time that the great Ron Barassi, who'd experienced 6 winning grand finals as a player with the Melbourne Football Club under the coaching of the great Norm Smith, decided to leave Melbourne and come to Carlton and captain coached. In fact, he actually played 50 games for Carlton in the number 31. But he ultimately brought Carlton up the ladder, and you're quite right. There was a big culture change, and he's in his 4th year at the club, achieved the ultimate success as a coach by winning the 1968 premiership. Then we lost the 69 grand final to Richmond, and then we won again in 1970 against Collingwood. Didn't make it in 71, but 72, of course, by that stage, Ron had retired, and John Nichols took over in 72 and captain coached Carlton to 72 and 73. But 72 as a premiership, losing grand final in 73. But it certainly was a monumental rise up the ladder after over 20 years of mediocrity, something that we're probably relating to right now, 20 years of mediocrity. But yes, a big culture change, and that is exactly what's needed at a football club, someone to come in and really shake the place up from a cultural perspective. Steve, neither of us were around at that time, but, well, I'd only just been born in 68. You no doubt are a fair bit younger than me, but it was a a big moment in football when Ron Barassi left Melbourne and came to Carlton.
Absolutely. I've only got the history and all the news items and things that I've read, dating back, and it was a huge shock. And of course, Melbourne had Norm Smith also leave as well. So
yes,
and they were a powerhouse club, winning all those grand finals, except that upset that Collingwood had over them. What was it, 58? I think it was. 58. That's
if it
right.
wasn't for if they'd beaten Collingwood in 58 and all the other years turned out as they did, they would have won 6 premierships in succession, which would have easily beaten Collingwood's previous record of 4 in a row back in the late 20s, and I think it culminated in 1930. So I think you'll find that Melbourne's golden era was right through those 1950s, and it took them 57 years to finally work out a way to achieve the ultimate success again, which they did last year. And good luck to them. It was a great win. But we certainly salute Ron Barassi, and we certainly hope that he's in good health, in reasonable health. I know he's been going through some dramas with dementia, and that's never easy. But it's I guess they say it's an old person's disease, but it's 86 is a pretty good innings. But let's hope that Ron can continue on and continue to embrace life, and let's hope that we can all continue to pay tribute to him and the contribution that he's made to the great Australian game.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing, I think it was only probably 3 or 4 years ago, a lady was having a handbag snatched in St Kilda, I think it was, and Ron Barassi was out to dinner, saw it, ran across the road and chased the would-be thief down. I mean, this is just
and he got kicked in the head for his trouble, and that's what really probably set him on that path to some sort of brain, I guess, injuries.
Trauma,
yeah.
Well, on
yes,
that
you're
note,
right.
boys,
in an act, and as you sorry to interrupt you, Steve. I guess the point, the big point about that is that it was an act of mercy and an act of kindness and an act of trying to help someone who was in trouble. That's what caused him to be injured in the way that he was.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That just sums up Ron Barassi, though, doesn't it? Hey,
the man, yeah,
great man, and we should always be thankful at Carlton Football Club to George Harris, I guess, who made it happen in his very early days as president, and brought across Ron Barassi, and that changed the course of the Carlton Football Club for a number of years, almost 30 years, you'd probably say.
Easy.
So,
guys, on that note, I'm going to leave you go because Debbie's just come into the studio. I didn't really see much of the AGM, but I'm going to listen. I'll be in the background, and I wish you well, and I'll catch up with you guys later on.
Terrific, Joe. Thanks again.
I'll see you soon.
All right, all the best. Okay, Steve. Well, out goes the ugly duckling, and here comes the beauty.
Don't know about that.
Although, Debbie, we need to see your face. You're not quite in the middle of the screen.
Oh, it's the camera. The camera.
All right. Better. Let's hope you can get it nice and settled for us. And sit back just a little for us. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, Debbie Pelty. Always great to have you with us and sharing your views on all matters Carlton. I guess you've probably just also taken a quick squiz at the halftime score in the AFLW match between the GWS and Carlton, I assume, but in case
I checked it before.
Yeah.
I think we will say if anyone is prioritising this program and wanting to watch the replay, if you don't want to know the score, look away now.
We're just in front.
Very good.
We don't want to spoil the replay. Okay.
No, we don't want to spoil the big surprise. Look away now and put your television on mute. I'm about to give you the halftime score.
Yes.
GWS 3-1-19, and this game is being played in Canberra, of course, at Manuka Oval, and Carlton is in front by 2 points, 3 goals, 3-21. So we hope that the girls can hold on there and get a second consecutive victory if possible. Oh, I can hear some sort of commentary
Sorry.
going on there in the background. Come on, Debbie, you're not behaving yourself today.
Sorry, bloody phone. Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
all right.
Just so
While
you know,
you're getting yourself together, I'll remind all of our viewers that you can pass a comment or express your views on any of the matters that we discussed tonight, or ask a question that you'd like any one of us, or in fact all three of us as a panel, to answer for you. We're more than happy to do that. Just tune in to YouTube, have a look at Blue Sunday in the Blue Corner channel. And while you're at it, like us and subscribe, and even share it with all of your friends. And hopefully, from that point, you'll get notifications about all of our shows that are coming up in the coming weeks. Also, you can join us on Facebook, where you can do the same. Leave a comment, ask a question, express an opinion, whatever suits you. Do that on the In the Blue Corner channel on Facebook. All right, let's get on with our discussion tonight, because there's lots to go through, and there's lots to cover. Debbie, Steve, the annual general meeting was held on Tuesday night. It was an online meeting. We weren't able to gather at a venue because it's a bit hard to get 100-odd people together in a room these days. Apparently, you can put 100,000 people in the MCG, but you can't have 100 people in a room at Moonee Valley or the MCG. Apparently.
So on that, Vince, we'll start
why
with
don't
that.
we start there?
Yeah. So the excuse was used of which we knew that was going to be used around the new development and the works, and then also the AFL COVID-19 protocol. So they were the two excuses used. I must say, last year's online meeting was pretty relaxed. It was more of a in-person online meeting, meaning they didn't utilize the advantage of the online platform. This year, they really used the online platform well to censor out, to limit responses, to limit the amount of questions someone could ask. So it was really, really strictly adhered to. Whereas last year, there were multiple questions allowed to be asked. But this was really reined in.
Yes, heavily censored, and almost nil opportunity to follow up with a follow-up question if the answer wasn't to your satisfaction. So anyway, I guess that's one of the reasons why one of the people that asked the question was, is this something that we as a club are going to continue to do, or are we going to actually gather again as a group of members in a room next year? And I think the answer was given that we'd like to get back to being together again, but time will tell, won't it? I guess. What did you think of that, Debbie? Did that bother you that we had an online meeting and didn't have the opportunity to gather?
See, I'm a very different opinion. I've actually thought about all this whole process and of this whole thing, and I'm on the committee of the Fans Association. We did the same thing. We had an online thing, right. And personally, I have no issue with it. I really don't. I would have loved to have been in person, but I think given the year that we've had, the 2 years that we've had in Victoria, and the numbers of the lockdown and what's going on, I think this having an online AGM right now at this time, right when it was, I don't see a problem. Moving forward, if it was next year and they did the same thing, I would have a problem. But right
Debbie,
now, I don't see anything.
Yeah. So just to clarify, how did the Fans Association run their meeting compared to the Carlton Football Club AGM?
Very similar.
There was limited chance to respond to questions.
People could type in questions and we would answer all the questions. No problem at all.
And if the response wasn't adequate, what would happen?
Well, it was actually all the people accepted the responses. They said, well, that's great. Thank you very much. So they answered the question. So that was, but if somebody wanted a follow up, we would say, look, we don't want to make this a long process. I think that's what it was, especially online. We don't want to make it a long process. So if you do have any further issues, to contact us, and we gave an email address or something like that. So that was it. But on the whole, people thought it was good. There was no issue.
Yeah, but I suppose, and I'm probably going somewhere with this, Vince. I think you know where I'm going with this.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah, but
yeah. So the AFL Fans Association, shall we say, your meetings, I would assume, are a little bit more collegiate. Would that be a good word to use compared to the a team that's underperformed? Well, they're a bit more harmonious, I would say, or I think people
is that
are
because
there
it's
for
all
different
encompassing
reasons.
and it's not fans of a particular club who are, for example, unhappy with the way its club is going. So
you're trying to achieve something for the greater good, in theory, right?
Yes, exactly. So it is very different. It is. I grant you that it is very different. But for me personally, given what we've just experienced over the past 2 and a bit years, I have no issue for that meeting for the past 2 years having the AGMs online. Because you do get the tendency as if there is a way of somebody coming back and answering. I understand that you want to answer the question. There was no format for people to have a right of reply to an answer. But I think moving forward, that because half of the point of when you have a right of reply is also looking at body language, looking at the person, looking at getting a sense of what they're trying to say. So
a bit like Parliament, Debbie. Watching the federal Parliament, they have follow-up questions, and you see the minister squirm for a bit longer.
So I think given the formats of what we've achieved, but I think moving forward, if we were to go down the same path of having next AGM online, I would be completely against it because there's no need for it now. Unless we're going into war, which, given what's going on over in Ukraine, anything's possible. But no, but I think otherwise we have to move. We have to understand the limitations and accept that there's going to be limitations. There's nothing we can do about to change it. But moving forward, we've got to change it. It's got to be in person, irrespective.
Okay. Can I just, before we move on to the next point, I don't want to labour too much on each and every point because we've got a lot to get through. But what about the timing of the meeting, Debbie? Are you comfortable with AGMs or annual general meetings being held at this time of year when we're really wrapping up the previous year, or do you want to see AGMs happening prior to, say, Christmas the previous year?
Yep, prior to Christmas the previous year. AGMs are supposed to be an annual general meeting. They're supposed to be at the end of the year. So for me, I agree. It has to be before Christmas.
Yeah. I think that there's got to be a lot of pressure put on the club to make that happen because Steve and I have discussed in previous editions of this show that it's our belief that this is being done for very strategic reasons to minimise the appetite for change at board level. And we'll talk a little bit about the board director election.
There are numerous reasons that this happens, though. Essentially, you've got a meeting that has to adhere to what the Constitution says, where essentially you could push it into mid-March at latest based on the Constitution. Well, we're basically 2 weeks off that. So they're pushing the boundaries. I don't want to spoil thunder, but you only have to announce winners of any election. You don't need to talk about the number of votes they received. You just need to mention that. An online meeting is permitted. Now, the advantages of an online meeting are huge for the incumbents, for the current board. Huge advantage and huge disadvantage to the members. There are so many elements, one by one, that diminish the democracy of the football club.
And when you add them all up, it makes it extremely difficult to create any sort of change for good.
Or accountability.
At the top level.
Accountability.
Or exactly, or bring about any accountability that really ought to be brought to bear. So anyway, I'm glad that you agree with us there that the annual general meeting should be prior to Christmas in the year that we're actually wrapping up, because the financial year every year at every club is the end of October, and giving the auditors all of November, and if they need it, an extra week or two in December, gives them more than adequate time to prepare the accounts and to hold the meeting. So clearly, we used to have those meetings in the first or second week of December up until the previous president took over, and then all of a sudden it got changed to February, and it could only have been changed to February for very strategic reasons that I'm sure that the board members are not prepared to admit.
That wasn't the only thing you changed.
No.
For strategic reasons. Yeah.
No. But let's move on. One of the things that I noticed at the very start of the meeting, when it eventually got started, was the obituaries. What did you make of Luke Sayers' performance as our new president, in the way he went about the formalities, if you like, of the meeting? I felt it was a little static, almost emotionless, very programmed and very clinical,
Contrived.
I guess. Yeah, and what saddened me and disappointed me is that when he went through the obituaries, it left me feeling like he's just done a roll call at a school or something. I mean, there was no elaboration of anything. There was no, paying tribute to anyone that made a meaningful contribution at the club. I mean, some made far more contributions than others. I mean, take John Elliott, for example. Surely, as a fellow president,
Silvani, I mean,
and Serge Silvani, exactly, and Serge Silvani. I mean,
he's got a
what more champion do you want than that as a player?
He's got a reel that is longer than any of our arms put together.
Correct.
Yet nothing was put up on that. They should have been. I thought it was contrived. I actually thought it was very cold. I thought it was very. I didn't like it at all. I mean, come on.
I've got another opinion on that, and I think we need to pose the question of. I've been to AGMs, not as many as you, Vince, but I'd be not far behind you though. I've been to many an AGM, and we could go through all the president. Stephen Kernahan, albeit he wasn't the most, shall we
eloquent
say,
speaker.
Yeah, but he bled for the.
But he was all heart.
Absolutely. So when he
bleeds blue.
When he would read the sheet, so he'd be given his sheet and he'd talk about each person. He would have known them, and he also would have been able to share an experience that he had with them. And the more famous ones, he potentially would have also been able to talk about how he'd visited them just before they passed away, if they had a long illness, what their contribution was to the club, the era that they were in, some story linkage to it. And it gave you a feeling of the fabric of the football club. It gave you that feeling. We come together as a club each year, and it's a fabric. So I pose the question. I'll pose it as a question. I've got my own opinion, of course. I don't think this current president knows anything about the football club, and I'd like to get people's opinion on that. I think the fact that the way those names were read out, I would really question. It was the most plastic, clinical, sterile roll call, as you place it, Vince. And why didn't we get the emotion and the culture of the football club? This is being corporatized so much so that these are people that have put their bodies on the line, these players, even if they just played the one game. You heard there was one of them that just played the one game.
But also, Steve, another point is how many great players for the club left at the end of last year? Where was the role? Where was the video of them? Where was the video of Eddie Betts?
Thank you for your contribution, etc., etc. Yeah.
Of their
Mark
contribution.
Murphy,
Again, it was just a roll call.
Eddie Betts 350. All of that.
It's exactly the same. It was cold, clinical, contrived, and it just bothered the crap out of me.
This meeting is a procedural. This is this is procedural. If the board didn't have to do it by the incorporated association of the Constitution, they wouldn't have this meeting. This is just a pain in the neck for them. They're just doing because they have to, and they have to give members a chance to type a couple of questions and put up with them. But other than that, they don't want to have They don't want to engage this meeting at all. That's my view.
But isn't an AGM, sorry.
No, go for it, Debbie.
Isn't an AGM supposed to give members a review of the year and also to celebrate those that have contributed to the club, both past and the ones that have left?
Yeah.
So you got that in other AGMs when I've been to them, and but you did not get that here. This AGM was over in an hour. It could have gone for at least an extra 10, 15 minutes more and celebrated the Serge Silvanis, the John Elliott, even though he did the wrong. I mean, the past players. It could have done so much more, but it was just, I thought it was just very cold and clinical. And that's what I'm saying. We can't go back and change that, but I hope next year when it's done in person, that it's completely different. It must be completely different.
Oh, it'll be different, all right, but I don't know if it'll be different for those reasons, Debbie. But that's another story. It's in person.
I hope so.
Yeah, I just can't help but feel that if it was a genuine love of the club and the people that have contributed all these years, you'd be in tune with this.
Yeah.
As a president, how can you not be in tune with? Hang on, I'm about to read out some names of people who have passed away at the club, some of them legends. I'm also about to read out a list of players that have just retired or been delisted. I mean, even Levi Casbolt, who was delisted and is now going to be playing at the Suns, he is a life member of the Carlton Football Club. So he should be still celebrated and mentioned and given some highlights package as well as Mark Murphy and Eddie Betts. Nothing. Now, if they do it all next year, Debbie, the point I want to make is this. If they do all of this next year, right, it's because they've received such compelling feedback about how pathetic it was this year that's why they'll do it next year.
But Vince,
not because there's a real genuine love of the club, an understanding of the club and its players and its heroes, and therefore an appreciation for what they've really contributed. It'll be done because, we forgot to do that last year. Better make sure we do it this year.
You shouldn't need that feedback.
No.
No
not
way.
At all.
And also, even if you were given a script to read off, because obviously he was given a brief, here's your script.
No
okay.
Doubt.
Next. Get my papers in order. He should have ad-libbed it and gone from the heart to say and talk about his experiences. But I challenge the fact that I believe this is just another charity, another board that some of these people are on. They're on all sorts of different
boards of directors.
Get list as long as your arm. They're all on them. And this Carlton Football Club is just one of those. Get in the queue.
It might be, but it's the nature of its business is a lot more public than what most of the other boards that they're on. And if they're not careful, they will be highly embarrassed at some of this sort of behaviour and some of this lack of attention to detail that they should be across. They really should be across that.
It's a simple thing to do a highlights reel. I mean, really and truly, I do it all the time. Different things at work and from
Well, then what does it say about even the staff at the club who have helped prepare this AGM and put together the highlights packages? None of them are in tune with it either. So what does that say about the culture? The culture that exists even underneath
Wasn't
the
that Brian Cook?
They've had a lot of turnover there. They've had a lot of turnover in those roles, as you all know.
I know. Yeah.
Well, Brian Cook's been there over 4 months now. I remember him saying that his first day was, I think, on the 18th of October, which was like 3 weeks after the grand final had taken place. So, over 4 months in the job now. I mean, these are the sorts of things that I think should be given a lot more attention and a lot more credence. Anyway, one of the other things that I noticed that was declared was that all of the board directors, every single one of them were in attendance. That was declared at the start, but I never saw one of them other than the president, and I never heard from any of them other than the president. So,
they have to. Yeah, well, if they actually legally, because the person who runs if a board member is not in attendance, they actually have to state legally and there's
Oh,
apologies.
look,
So
I'm not.
yeah, I know you're being
I'm not-
sarcastic there.
I'm not saying that they necessarily weren't there, Debbie, but they were very conspicuous by
Yes.
their absence in terms of,
Yes.
not being seen and not being heard.
So,
but anyway,
so regarding that, Vince, we should have had, if they were present, we should have had the ability to.
Well, why
to
wasn't
ask
there
it.
an introduction of the 4 new board members?
Yeah. Well, number one, but number two, if they were present, we should have had the ability to ask questions and direct them to those specific individuals whose portfolio is relevant to the question, or the president should have directed that question to the person. For example, finance, for example, football department.
That's why the Prime Minister doesn't take every question at question time in Parliament House.
That's right.
He's got ministers that are meant to be across their relevant portfolio. So I don't see why we can't have, all 8 board members, including the president, available for questions that are relevant to their swim lane, as we keep hearing the president say.
Yes.
All right. Well, maybe that'll change next year as well. Who knows? Now, can I just ask? Has there been any detail provided ever by our football club, not just for this board, but for any previous board in living memory, as to the commercial arrangements that exist between each of those individual board members and the football club, whether it be as an individual or whether they are directors of a company that does business with the football club, or they are shareholders, even if they're not directors of a company, just simply shareholders of a company that does business with the football club. Because I find it extremely interesting that a media company that was sold in whole or in part to 2 Carlton Football Club directors in former President Mark Lejudice and still current director Craig Matheson, they bought into a media company that was directed and still is directed by Lara Carey, the new director of the Carlton Football Club. Now, do you find that that's something that should be disclosed to the members? Because I do.
Absolutely.
Well, doesn't a company, no matter what it is, if you have a board, don't you have to state if there's a conflict of interest regarding the entity that you're supposed to be on a board for?
And what you then would do, Debbie, is you would excuse yourself in meetings, or you would declare it. Firstly, you'd declare it. Secondly, if it was such a conflict, you may need to exit yourself from that conflict or exit yourself off the board, potentially. And if it was perceived as a conflict that can be managed opposed to not managed, you would have to exit the meetings during that period of discussion that involved that commercial entity. I know Ian Collins, and when he was the president at Carlton, obviously he had a commercial. He was the CEO of Docklands, Marvel Stadium, Telstra Dome, whatever you want to call it. He had to do that. But that was pretty obvious that was his role.
Yes, Steve, I'm sure he had absolutely no involvement or influence over the decision to no longer hold games at Princes Park or at the Oval and take them to Docklands. None at all.
I'm talking theoretically, Vince.
Sorry, I can't help but be sarcastic. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I know.
Theoretically, though, yes, that is the case. Now, there are other commercial arrangements that these directors are involved with.
Sure.
But
doesn't it
it should be listed in the annual report
that you've got a new director just been parachuted into a position on the Carlton board, whose company has been sold to 2 other directors on the Carlton Football Club board, and now all of a sudden that company is deriving a benefit from doing business with Carlton. Carlton is now paying money to this company, right, where it previously didn't. And now the director of that company is now a board member. I mean, what about the spider web of connection here must be huge.
What about Tim Lincoln, who essentially is a sponsor of the club now?
Yep,
that's not a great.
Is that appropriate?
Could I just could I just sponsor the football club and buy myself a seat at the board? Is that how it works?
Well, Joe
Right?
was just put in the comments, because I'm reading some of the comments, and it said
Right.
in the account it's called related party transactions, and they need to be disclosed in the account. So they actually have to put down. So I can't remember reading anything about
They're not in
that.
there. They're not in there. No.
Well, they have
So
to
what does
be.
that make it? What does that say about our accounts?
That's a very good question.
I mean,
We'll get to that.
Dodgy.
Look, I mean, I know that the three of us are all about full disclosure. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. So, I keep hearing from Luke Sayers about how transparent this board is and how transparent he's going to be as a president. I need to see it in action, not just hear it in words. So far, I'm not seeing it.
One of the questions that was asked, I actually asked a question, it was combined in with this other question, is regarding our reliance on pokies.
Yes.
And I did not like that answer, because that was kind of just swept. He said, Brian Cook and the team are looking into it. No, I don't want to hear that. They've been saying that for years.
It was a pathetic
I don't want to
answer,
hear that.
really.
I want to see what they're doing.
So Debbie, last year, because I make notes on all the AGMs and spreadsheets and all sorts of things. As I said, everyone's got a different. Some people like Supercoach. I like AGMs. Anyway, we looked into that, and Kane Little shot himself in the foot by talking about that he sort of somewhat promised that Carlton would get out of pokies, and there was an article in the Herald Sun 1 or 2 days later speaking about that, and I believe one pokey baron wasn't happy at all that the Carlton CEO had made that type of bold promise to the members. But you're right, Debbie. That was if you look at the actual AGM, the annual report itself, it does talk about August 22, 2022 is the date that the poker machine licenses run out, expire. So how we move forward from that date onwards, I don't know, because that is a big day. So that's as long as Carlton have that. So they're going to have to make a big decision on that in August.
Because I know, like with other AGMs, and from what I've been told from other clubs who are trying to get out of it, they have actually said to the members and sent a message that we are actively looking into ways, because I understand the revenue that goes to the club. I understand that, but you've got to find a different revenue. I think, because what my question is you've got this huge contradiction. You've got the players such as Harry McKay representing the anti-gambling campaign, and I'm an anti-gambler. I'm so, as being the daughter of a gambler, I'm an anti-gambler. I know the pitfalls. So you've got a player such as these representing the anti-gambling campaign. Yeah, you're playing, but your club is right in the throes of it with the pokey machines.
Yeah, so they have the love the odds, not the game campaign, and a lot of clubs will throw players in there as ambassadors. But
you mean the game, not the odds?
Yeah, love the
one. Sorry.
Yeah, love the game, not the odds.
Yeah. That was the wrong campaign. That was another one I was talking about. Yeah. That was the TAB one. Anyway, look, you're right, but on one hand, but then really, it's just lip service. It is just lip service. They're almost competing KPIs, aren't they? And we're after a direction for the club of where they're going. We're after what's your strategy, and they haven't been able to articulate it for the last 5 years. This question has come up at every AGM and has not been articulated one bit.
Also, I think this whole campaign of respect, they want to have this great campaign of respect, and gender equality, but half of the time, and violence against women, to stop violence against women, but some of the times the violence against women is perpetuated by this whole excuse my language, by gambling. By gambling. Sorry, Debbie, as a daughter of a failed gambler, I know the pitfalls.
Debbie, I asked the now Commonwealth Equal Opportunity minister that used to be on our board.
Kate Jenkins?
I asked her, Kate. Yeah, I asked her the question at an AGM, and I asked how does our Orange Socks Respects program work with our pokey revenue? How do those two things balance out? How do they work? And I got a response.
In other
I think
words, how are you going mixing oil and water? In other words,
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
and this is
doesn't
it, right?
mix, does it?
Now, we're meant to live our values, aren't we? If we really believe in so many of these things, we're meant to live them.
Correct.
Healthy mind and a healthy body. Have I got that one right, Vince? But whatever it is, anyway, right? We're meant to live these things. We don't just have them there as tick boxes.
Imagine having a coat of arms that says "Mens sana in corpore sana," which means a sound body and a sound mind.
That's it. Yeah.
And at the same time being sponsored by a cigarette company and a 4 and 20 pie company or someone like that.
No, I agree.
It just doesn't make sense, does it?
No. It doesn't.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I think it's an interesting. Again, it's interesting the lack of information, the lack of clarity, the lack of disclosure that continues to run rife within our club, and to get information about all this, it's like trying to get a needle out of a haystack.
So the question was
not
asked.
Very forthcoming with information about anything that they don't want to detail.
No, the question was asked though about the new development, and there was a Dorothy Dix question asked about that. But
you know what we mean by that, don't you, Deb?
No, enlighten me.
Okay, well, a Dorothy Dixer is a bit like federal parliament again, where let's just say a question is for the Prime Minister and it comes from one of his own members of parliament who asks him a question that the party itself wants asked, so that they can gloat about all the wonderful work they've done in that particular area. So it's called a Dorothy Dixer. I think Dorothy Dix used to be some woman in a magazine somewhere that used to answer questions of people that are having relationship issues or something.
That's
and
right.
half of the questions are just made up by the editors, you know?
Yes,
So
really from people at all.
That I know. Okay.
So that question was asked after the question that asked essentially where's the $6 million gap gone between the $29 million that's been received for the development since 2019, year after year after year. We're up to 29 million now, and only up to 23 million has been spent. So there's a $6 million gap.
Yep.
Where is that money? Has that been used to pay off the debt? And we got a definitive answer. All of the money,
definite answer, wasn't it?
Yeah, all of the money to pay off the debt, the Westpac overdraft debt that we had, we got up to 6 million at one point, was from revenue earned prior to 2020. Now,
well, I can't understand how you can make that statement when our profits don't add up to that amount of money.
No.
I don't know about you, Debbie, but if you've got a business, right? I don't care how much revenue it has. I don't care how much turnover you have. You've got to make profit in order to pay back debt, right?
Of course you do.
If you do,
I know that because we're in business ourselves. So I know that.
Anyone who runs a business would know that unless you've made a profit and then you've paid your tax on that profit, so your after-tax profit is the only available funds you've got to pay down your liabilities, which are loans and overdrafts and any other form of credit, credit cards. So how can Luke Sayers say that none of the grants money was used, even on a temporary basis, to pay back the historical debt when the profits that have been made up until the start of year 2020 don't add up to that amount of money? It's just
if you took the grant money out, out of those profits, they weren't from selling jumpers or crowds. Yeah, that's for sure.
You know what they've cleverly done, Deb? They have attributed grants money into the revenue column.
Of course they did.
So it shouldn't be regarded as revenue. Or if it is going to be regarded as revenue, it should certainly be separated from normal trading revenue, in my view, because it's not regular year-by-year revenue. You don't get government grants of this nature on a regular basis, do you?
No.
It's extraordinary.
When you look
revenue.
at that money, it's meant to be spent on just one project and not muddied into the waters of the rest of the club's funds. And I think that's what they've tried to do so that they can disguise the repayment of at least some of the debt with some of that money. I also want to point out too, Steve, however, that where it also gets murky is that you've also got something like $3 million worth of philanthropic donations.
Yeah.
Right?
And
that's partly gone towards paying back the debt. Right?
But there was $5 million that the club had to raise. So the project is 40 million. The government, both state and federal, contributing 35 million.
Correct.
So there's a $5 million gap.
Yep.
So the club had to raise that themselves. Unknown philanthropic benefactors that shall remain nameless, that just donating because they love the club. They don't want a name attached to it at all. No strings at all.
No, please don't name who I am. No, I couldn't possibly do with any adulation. Oh dear! Hey, isn't it amazing how they spin the web? It really is smoke and mirrors. I just can't help but chuckle when I heard Luke say that. No, make no mistake, there's no grants money has gone towards the repayment of debt. Of course, he's got to say that. Can you imagine if someone reported that back to the Victorian state government or the federal government? If he had admitted that, yes, we've used some of that money to pay down our loans, I mean, that would be back page news, probably even front page news.
Yeah.
If he admitted to that. So of course he's not going to admit to it. They have prepared these accounts in such a way to muddy the waters, and so that they can get away with using some of that money where it can't really be identified in a very clear-cut fashion that it's gone towards that debt. All I can say is this: if the grants weren't received, there's no question that the money wouldn't have been there in the accounts to pay down the debt. That's really the answer to your question.
So let's break this down. What does this really mean? Because some people may be thinking, hang on, what are we talking about? Federal Budget Day or something? This is why this is important. This is really why this is important. And I don't want to sound patronising or condescending, but essentially, when the music stops and the federal grant money runs out, and the facility is half built or 3/4 built, and all the contractors have left because they haven't got paid because we haven't got any money left, or we do pay for it and we now go into more debt. Either way, that money that we don't have, that additional debt, that's money that's not going into the football program. That's money that's a noose around our neck, essentially, because we now have interest to bear on that, and we can't do other projects or do other things with the football club. So when the average member just says, I just want to win games, I don't want to know about all this stuff, you have to know about this stuff, because if this stuff's wrong and we have $6 million of debt again,
we
cannot put the money into the football program, and then everyone would be whinging about why we're not spending. And everybody knows the have and the have-nots in the AFL, and the big difference.
You just look at the prime example of the Melbourne Football Club. When they were on their knees, one person got them all financially because he poured money into it. That was Goodnick. He poured money with his friends and with his associates. They poured money into the club. So, and how long did it take them to achieve any level of success, both off the field and on the field? It took them years and years to do that. So people don't think that the two things are correlated, or that they have to work in conjunction with each other. Otherwise, you'll never get a successful club anywhere.
Yeah, I do. You're absolutely right, Debbie, and very well put too, Steve, because I wanted
to say that, Vince. because it's important for people to understand why we talk about these things. We're not just talking about them because we're nerdy accountants, right? We're talking about them because it's important.
Well, I was just about to say exactly that. But what concerns me is the level of apathy and sort of, that's all that political stuff. I'm not interested in that. All I want to do is see Carlton win games again. And yes, we all want to see Carlton win games again, get into finals series and win premierships, but it doesn't just happen because you wish for it to happen. This sort of stuff that's going on off the field dramatically affects our capacity to achieve success on the field. And more and more members need to start taking notice of this sort of thing and holding the club to account. We're certainly doing our bit to shine a spotlight on some of these areas. And
I don't know if you've seen a documentary. It's not about football, but it was about one I consider one of the greatest coaches of sport was the basketball coach who talked about, with Michael Jordan was there and everything there. What he talked about, and he said, if you do not have a successful and cohesive club working in the background, you will never have a successful, cohesive club working on the field. Those two things unite together. And he said, the fact is that people don't want to see that. The average member is not interested. But he said, they've got to get interested because otherwise we would have never been successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Vince, directors that are appointed as directors because of relationships, commercial or personal or whatever that they have, they have to really we have to question that, because we need to ensure that every board member is working as hard and they're getting their hands dirty, not just attending meetings, but operationally they're writing the detail of their portfolio, because if they're not, and they're just a passenger, and if you go through that annual report, again, pretty boring, pretty dry stuff. You look at some of the board members and how many meetings they attended, and it's pretty in the last sad.
12 in the 12 months between February of 2021 and the annual general meeting in February last week, out of 12, was it 12? Or was it 15? I think it might have been 15 board meetings that were held during that 12-month period. It was 15, by the way. I think Jean Pratt attended 2. Mind you, of course, she did leave the board in August, so that's a 6-month period. But still, you would have expected maybe 8 or 9 meetings to have been held by then. Two meetings. Chris Judd, 3.
3, yep.
I think most of the others attended all of them. I think the president might have been, as in Mark Lejudice, might have been absent for 1 during that time. So all of them pretty much attended every meeting except for Jean Pratt and Chris Judd. So is it any surprise that those two were 2 of the 4 that were replaced? And Mark Lejudice had reached his 12-year limit. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have left. Chris Townsend was the other one who was a bit of a surprise. What would you call him? A surprise departure. From the board. But not sure what reasoning he gave. But, I mean, what does that say about board members that only attend a couple of meetings a year? Are they actually of any benefit to the club if they're not going to attend? I mean, for Chris Judd, I'd love to know from Chris why he didn't attend board meetings. I know that he announced about a week or 2 after Mark Lejudice announced in April of last year, when Mark Lejudice announced that he would not be continuing on as president after his 12-year limit came to an end. Chris Judd, about a week or 2 later, also announced that this would be his last year. Now, why did he not just leave immediately if he didn't intend to attend board meetings?
Well,
it'd be an interesting question to ask him, wouldn't it?
I'll tell you why.
Answer.
Well, it's. I don't think. I don't think Chris.
He might do it in private.
I don't think the answer is with Chris Judd necessarily. The answer is with how and I think this probably leads us to the election results as well, which you'll talk about in a minute, Vince, but how they would like to guard a position on the board and have that position come up at just the right time. Timing is everything, so that those people can, the replacements can be invited on.
I wouldn't mind betting, and I know this is pure speculation, but putting all of the, jigsaw puzzles pieces together, I think Chris Judd at that time when Legitiche announced that he was leaving, he would have said, I'm out of here too, and I want to go now. And they probably said, look, Chris, don't worry about attending meetings, but please don't leave now because we haven't got a replacement for you as a football director. So we need to go out on a bit of a search for one. And that's when all of a sudden we started to hear things like, Jordan Lewis has been approached to join the Carlton board and he's knocked them back. Justin Lepich has been approached to join the Carlton board and he's knocked them back. That's when all of a sudden they had almost run out of options as Carlton people and they're starting to go after Hawthorn people and Brisbane Lions people and Richmond people or whatever.
Can I ask you a question? I have my own personal feelings regarding Chris Judd and it will probably go against a lot of the majority, but that's my personal feelings.
That's okay.
What does that tell you about the character of a person who is supposedly loves the club, but turns around and says, I'm going to resign, but I don't want to attend the meetings? What does that tell you? For me, that tells me actually a very weird, it's somebody who does not have the passion for the club that he said he did.
But did you ever stop to think that maybe he was so what's the right word? He disagreed. He disagreed so much with how the board operated, because this is some of the mail I'm getting, is that he was in such disagreement and it sat so uncomfortably with him about how this board functioned that he didn't want to be part of it anymore. They pleaded with him to stay until they got a replacement, and it's only until they found Greg Williams in a state of emergency almost at the club that they finally announced, yes, Greg Williams is going to come on and Chris Judd's going to come off. And that's when they did the big, 4 people off, 4 people on thing.
Do you think...
In the meantime, Judd would have said, I'm not going to be part of this board anymore, whether I'm officially part of it or not officially part of it. I have a philosophical problem with the way you people operate, and I'm not going to be part of it anymore.
So hang on. Okay, so given that,
I just think he should have left immediately, whether they asked him to stay or not. That's what I think.
I just think you either do or you're either in or you leave immediately. I just have as I said, I have my own personal feelings regarding Chris Judd.
Especially when you see what happened with Teague and everything during the year. Judd was copping a lot of criticism because he was missing in action and he was meant to be our football director. And I think he made an error of judgment in staying on beyond April. If he was checking out, if he literally checked out by April, he should have announced, I'm actually off right now. I'm not part of the board. I'm resigning immediately. Here's my letter of resignation.
Okay, Carl, I'm gonna do a hypothetical here now. Okay.
Sure.
Let's say Chris Judd, because he's got a lot of power, whether he knows it or not. He's got a lot of power with members and with the general community. So let's just say Chris Judd is disillusioned. He knows what's going on, and he's disillusioned with the board, and he hands in his resignation. Do you think he could have said, you know what? I don't like what's going on, but I'm not going to just walk away, because I'm not just going to walk away. I am going to come out and say publicly what I think is going wrong here. And what is the situation? Do you think that it would have changed anything over the course of the year? I'm not talking about David Teague. I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about the whole scenario of Carlton over the past last year. Do you think if he would have had the guts to come out and say something is wrong here, it needs to be fixed after he resigned, do you think it would have changed anything?
It could have. That's probably a very good point. I think he could have done that, and he probably would have been roundly applauded publicly and also by the Carlton members. He probably would have been lambasted by the Carlton board, though.
I'll answer your hypothetical, Debbie. The commercial business relationships that Chris Judd would have,
risky.
Especially with the Pratt faction of the board, would be and that's just one faction, would be way too risky for him to say anything negative. So he would have
burned his bridges in business with a lot of that.
And also I think, and another reason why he probably couldn't is because he probably had to sign a document of confidentiality.
And also, Debbie, why we don't have Carlton has got a lot of influential supporters, but why none of them come out to challenge the board at all is because of their fear of potential retribution in the business world. Because of the nature of the families and the wealth that sits on the Carlton board.
Yeah.
They're intimidated.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. In fact, I can tell you, we all three of us know when approaches were made to various individuals to consider being part of an alternative board, a lot of them ran for the hills for that very reason, that they didn't want to be openly, going to war against people that they do business with. And it was just too much to lose from a business perspective. And yes, I love the club, but I love my business more.
But you know what? I think
it was basically what they were telling us.
Yeah, I think the powers that be on that board have made a calculated risk by going down that path. But if they would have been a lot more open and said, yes, we've got problems, we want to change them, here's what we're going to do, let's bring it out to the members, I think they would have, in the end, on the whole, been supported more by the members than they are now.
Absolutely.
I wholeheartedly
even if they didn't change the problems,
getting
Debbie.
The Carlton board to make any admission of that sort of that nature is asking a bit too much, I'm afraid. Saying we got it wrong and saying that we've identified a few areas that we've really stuffed up with is just something that they're not. It's just not in their vocabulary.
But I just find that very. I don't like arrogance, and I think that's so arrogant, so arrogant, really.
Well,
anyway.
In the end, guys, let's keep moving.
We'll talk about the election.
A profit was declared of $1.28 million, I believe. Isn't it amazing how the profit figures have been going up tremendously despite COVID and despite the revenues being crunched about 80%? And I don't know. They're doing some marvelous things with profit, especially when they include things like grants and philanthropic donations.
What about paid up memberships, Vince? What was your view on the way? How smart was the way that question was answered? Very intelligent.
Where are we at with membership? And I think Brian Cook got up and said, "Well, did he say 67 or 69,000
members? 67.
And he said, "And I want to stress they're all paid up members." Just in case any of you think that any of them are for freebies. What he didn't say is, yes, they're all paid up members, but maybe 15,000 of them have only paid somewhere between $1 and $9.
Yeah. So they're all paid up, all right, but $1 to $9. That's what they've paid for a full 11-game season membership. Look, I think again there needs to be more clarity, more transparency, more defined figures on this, and rather than be so hung up on numbers of members, let's look at the revenue. Well, what did the revenue go up from year to year? Did it go up 20% like our membership figure went up? I mean, we went from 67,000 in the middle of a COVID year, where the previous year you couldn't go to a game, and then they're trying to let us think that our membership just organically went up by 20% plus in 1 year, when we can't even attend games and we're languishing lower than the middle of the table and struggling to win games. And what, we've gone up 20%? Where have all of these supporters been hiding? Under a rock somewhere? I mean, anyone who believes these figures without questioning them has got to ask themselves, am I a
dunce or what? I mean,
Well,
why should I believe
I'll-
this sort of stuff without questioning it?
I'll say this to you, Vince. The fact that the transparency is not provided, and then when it's asked for, the vague responses that you get.
Yeah,
if you've got nothing to hide, fully share what the figure is, and then say, look, these are the paid ones. These are ones are not so paid. They're not as paid as the other paids, right? Okay. And so they're all paid, but they're just some
they're all
paid,
but they're not quite as paid as the other.
Not quite, yeah.
right? Those ones, we're trying to encourage people to be members, and this is our strategy.
We're giving
trying
them
to get
a first year,
all of that, and sell the dream
in the hope that they're going to join the following year. That's fine. If we can look. The one thing I wish this club would understand is that, as Debbie has already pointed out, if they were just honest and told us the facts and laid them all to bear, I mean, we would understand. It's okay, fine. So you've got really 65,000 members, and you've given away 16,000 of them at a bargain basement deal for this year, and hopefully next year you're going to retain the majority of them because they're going to pay for them like anyone else.
If you're speaking to one of the 65,000 people, they're your marketing or advertising team. So you have to be going to them and saying, right, we need you to get one person. We need you to get that. That's essentially what we're the best salespeople for the club in membership.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you need to be honest. What about the election, Vince? Did you want to talk about that?
Yes, I do. Well, the director election was announced, and surprise, surprise, the three directors who were put up for re-election, being the president Luke Sayers, the new football director Greg Williams, and the AFLW and VFLW director Paddy Kinnersley, were all very comfortably returned with percentages well into the I think Sayers and Williams were in the 90s, and Paddy might have been in the 80s.
Yeah.
And poor Bedri Sanovsky ended up with about 19%. Now I'm not going to go into it now because it'll take too long, but there's a reason why there's 90% for this and 91% for that and 85% for another. It's all a matter of what percentage of the total voters actually put in a vote for you. So if Bedri is looking at this, what he should understand is if there was, for example, 10,000 members that voted, he got 19% of the vote. So therefore, 1,900 people voted for him, right? If they were the numbers, hypothetically. What's a shame, yet again, for this transparent football club, is that we're not going to get told. In fact, the question came in, what are the numbers?
And Joel Rogers, the returning officer, he does this year after year after year. I'm not at liberty to say, in line with the Constitution, the arrogance, it just sets me up. In line with the Constitution, when we're not required to publish the result, so we're required to publish the result, not the margins.
Correct.
Yeah, and we only provide you with percentages. We don't provide you with the numbers. Now, can you imagine, Debbie, if at the next federal election, we had the Australian Electoral Commission only provide us with the percentages of which party got which votes in your seat, and you didn't know how many people voted, whether it was 23,000 people or 30,000 people or only 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the absolute uproar that would occur if the Australian Electoral Commission never told us the actual numbers of votes? But that's what our football club does to us now. And it's only happened during the presidency of Legiticho. And now it looks like continuing under the presidency of Sayers.
So the last time numbers were read out, and I remember this, was when 2014, when Joe Abriamo stood against the three directors and Stephen Kernahan. I think it might have been Stephen Kernahan's last year, or maybe 2012. Maybe. 2012. Anyway, it's all a blur, but I do remember it, and they did actually read out the numbers of votes that were actually cast.
Well, even
And
then,
could,
can I just ask you this question? Why isn't the number of voting members disclosed?
Yeah.
You know, why can't we tell out of our 81,000 members how many of them are eligible to vote under the Constitution? Because my understanding is that most of us ordinary members, we have to hold an 11-game membership as a minimum to be able to vote.
Correct.
There are other exceptions to that for country Victorian members, interstate members, and others such as honorary members. They're all entitled to vote. My information was that this year was around about 35,000 members were eligible to vote. But how many of those 35,000 actually voted at this election? I venture to say that it would be minimal. I think the vast majority of our members wouldn't have even known about the election, wouldn't have cared about the election even if they did know. And I wouldn't even mind betting that there was less than 500 people or 1,000 people that voted.
Well, look how many people turned up.
So therefore, Debbie, the reason that they're not telling us the numbers and they're only telling us the percentages is because if someone like Bedri Sejnovski, who lost 19% as opposed to 85 and 90 and 95% for the others, if he only knew that maybe he was only 250 votes short of where they are, he might actually rustle up an extra 250 votes from somewhere. You might actually be closer than what you think, even though the percentages would suggest we should be miles off it.
We should be encouraging participation.
Correct.
It's not compulsory voting.
No.
You know, you're not fined if you don't vote, but we should be encouraging participation at all costs. We want.
I agree.
And that leads to member engagement, members attending games, members spending money at the football club, members getting new members. It's not a little club for certain people. It's our football club.
But if you look, I mean, you've been to before COVID, all the AGMs. Who attends the AGMs? And the relative, unfortunately, the age group of who attends the AGMs. We are not engaging with people with the younger generation. We are not engaging with those with young families. If you look at who's attending the AGMs on the majority, I reckon those are the only people on the majority who are probably voting.
Debbie, the club are engaging with the younger people. Yeah. They are engaging. This is my opinion. They're engaging through them through digital means, but they're not engaging with them to vote or to attend the AGM because that's not a priority for them. They're engaging with them through PR firms to wheel out propaganda after propaganda story and get them to believe everything they tell them.
Yep.
And they're also
engaging with certain YouTube channels of Carlton podcasts and all that sort of thing, where they are promising access to players, they're promising access to staff, they're promising all sorts of things in order to get those, podcasts or YouTube channels, all these sort of social media groups to effectively act as propaganda arms for the club. And they're doing a damn good job of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a smart strategy. Yeah.
But the only reason why I go to AGMs, Debbie, is because I want to feel young again. Because I'm one of the youngest ones there at 53. and Steve, he turns up with his nappies and his dummy on. He's only funny. 46, 47? Yeah. Most of the people who attend these meetings would be well into their 60s and 70s, I'm afraid. But
and Vince, it is the same. Question. It is the same people and the same questions. And look, don't get me wrong though, I love that because you see their badges, 60 years of member, social club member, 1960, whatever. Like, absolute full respect for those people.
I completely agree. But as a club that has that many passionate members, it's they can talk the talk on social media and all these stuff like that. But come into the AGMs and make yourself known. Vote. Yeah. Use your membership and vote.
Absolutely. Can I just ask you also, Debbie, we've had discussions in recent weeks about the so-called independent nominations committee. Now,
oh, yes. Somebody asked a question about that.
What did you think?
It was a very clinical answer.
Do you remember what the question was?
Yeah, it was something about, I vaguely remember it, but I remember the answer, because the answer said, they said, how independent is the independent
Nominations committee.
How independent is that committee, and why do they deem somebody's worthy to be on a board and some are not? And they said to look at the qualifications and their past history and what they do and who they're, everything like that. I thought, well, that's a stock standard.
Well, that's what it's meant to do, yes.
Yes.
And from that point of view, if it actually operated as it should, it could actually perform a worthy function.
Correct.
The question's got to be asked, though, has the Carlton Independent Nominations Committee been set up correctly? And is it performing the function that it should for the benefit of the club? Or is it performing in its function to benefit the current directors and the current board? Because the question was also asked, can you, Mr. Sayers, tell me the last time anyone was actually approved and anointed by the Independent Nominations Committee as someone worthy of being on the Carlton board? When was the last time that happened? Now, the
1993.
Wow.
1993.
No, but still, the Independent Nominations Committee hasn't been in place for that long.
No, true. You're right. Yeah.
Right? It's only been going in there since 2014. So, the fact is, it has never, not once, recommended that someone from outside the board who's put up their hand to go for a position on the board, not once has that committee ever recommended that person be added to the board. It's always found a reason to say, no, this person doesn't have the qualifications.
What they did do with one individual is they said that the person had the qualifications, but there was also a current person standing that had the same qualifications, and they felt in the interest of stability, they would not endorse the other person.
The outsider.
Yeah, they'd go with the current one.
So in other words, it's an even go. So we're going to recommend that you re-elect the person who's already there for the purposes of stability, rather than saying we think that they're evenly matched from a skills point of view. So members, it's over to you. You choose who you'd like to vote for. No, they couldn't help themselves. Still, that to me gave them away. That to me is the classic example of showing your hand. Yeah. And that just goes to prove that this is anything but independent. The fact that the Carlton president sits as the chairman of that committee, how can it possibly be independent? I can tell you one thing, that because Luke Sayers was standing for election, he therefore couldn't take part in any of the meetings interviewing the candidates. I mean, really? And I've got to say that the other two gentlemen who are on that committee, Debbie, one of them is a long-time lawyer who's been part of the Carlton fraternity for decades.
30 plus years.
Easily. Andrew Mansour from K&L Gates. He does work for the club, has always done work for the club. He even did some work for me when I was the chairman of the president of the Carltonians, when we were allowed to have a president. And the other gentleman is John Davies from Ernst & Young, and he also, and the company again has also always done work for the club. So the ties that both of those gentlemen have with the existing board can hardly make them labelled as independent. And from what I can gather in my discussions with two or three of these people in recent years who have gone up for a board position and have told me about their experience with the INC, they have made it clear in no uncertain terms that they felt they were bullied and heavily questioned about their credentials and even asked questions of the nature of what makes you think you can beat Luke Sayers or Greg Williams or Paddy
you said
Kinnersley?
that last time. You said that last time.
That
I
is
got that
just
one.
outrageous
I got that one too.
question be asked.
Yeah, I got that.
That question be asked.
I got that one too, Vince. Don't worry.
Well, there you go. So, to me, big questions have got to be raised about the functioning of that committee. And yet again, Carlton has taken something that could actually perform a good function and corrupted it to suit itself. Right? That's what the board has done with it. That's my view. There's more than enough evidence for me to be able to come out and make that statement.
Yep.
Right, now let's go over one more thing in the in the annual general meeting, and that's the issue of the Constitution. It did pass. I'm not sure what the percentages were. Did they actually announce it? Or did I miss something?
No.
They just said it had been passed.
Yes.
Whether it was 75% or 100% or anywhere in between, we don't know.
No.
But they needed a minimum of 75% yes vote for the new Constitution to be passed, and it was. So I guess we're all happy with that now that the power grab clauses were removed.
Yep.
And I guess, have you got anything to say about the new Constitution, Debbie? Are you happy with it? Is there anything you're concerned about with it?
For now, it's fine. There's nothing much you can do, but for now, it's fine. But let's see what transpires over the year.
Steve, what are your feelings on the new Constitution? Are you happy it's been passed?
I'm happy the old one wasn't passed, to be honest.
Yes.
The new one, I'm more about damage control than anything else for me. So I'm not jumping up and down, dancing in the streets that the new one's passed. But I'm more concerned that the old
power
one,
grab clauses were removed. That's the big one.
And
for members anyway.
Yeah, and also normally every year they don't change the Constitution, so you'd think they might try some tricks again in maybe 4 or 5 years. So I think we're safe for another 4 or 5 years, but I won't hold my breath too much. But generally, that's where I'm thinking as well. Yeah. Yes,
look, I personally believe if you go through that Constitution, and I did make a couple of attempts late last year to, despite the agreement that Luke Sayers gave me that he would remove those clauses, there were a couple of additional suggestions that I made in a meeting with him at the club, and they were in relation to how the club communicates things to the members. That was one of the important changes that I felt wasn't written correctly in the Constitution, and that the way it is at the moment, it sort of allows the club to put something up on the club's website, and that can be deemed giving notice to the members. And I'm not comfortable with that. I'm still uncomfortable with the club being able to put up something on one of the tabs on the club's website, and you have to go through 2 or 3 pages to get to it and all the rest of it. And they deem that as providing notice to members. Well, unless you're a member who goes into the club's website every day and goes through every single tab and every single clause,
But legally, is that informing members? Because there is assumption then that every single member goes onto the website and the club. So it could be argued that is actually not informing the members.
I will give you an example, Debbie. I'll give you an example, right? Now, I believe that this is something that if the club was fair income about being transparent, it would do this. But, of course, it's not encouraging anyone to stand for the board, so therefore it doesn't. When the date is approaching, every year, I think it's the 24th of August.
Yes.
You have to have applied in writing with a signed petition. Is that right, Steve? You can maybe elaborate on this. Now, this is something that they just put this up on the website.
Yeah.
So the way it works, you go in and look for it, you don't know anything about it.
So the way it works is, if you know how it works, you
look for it every year. You look for it.
So if you want to nominate for the board, the closing date for nominations is normally the 1st of September or the 31st of August, depending on what date falls on a weekend and so forth.
Yeah.
The club, by law, need to advertise it, as you said, Vince, somewhere you go through a few gates and obstacles and you find it on the website.
By the 24th, they have to advertise it.
They have to advertise it. So you look on the website for it and you eventually find it. But
they're giving you a week. They're giving you a week once they put this up on the website. They're not sending any emails to anybody. They're not putting it up at the front page of their website. They're not making any announcements in the media. Nothing. All they're doing is on one particular page on the website, they're putting up that nominations are now open for anyone who wants to apply for a board position.
They're not attaching the form to that page. You need to contact the club secretary to obtain the form.
That's right.
Then you need to get 3 voting members, voting members as referees. So there are 11 game members plus. Yes. Then you have to take a photo of yourself, that you're going to attach, that you want to be attached to your biography. Then you submit a biography, which the club can potentially edit should they not like it. Yeah. And then you submit that in there. So to do all of that, it's a week. And then by the 3rd week of September, you'll meet with the Independent Nominations Committee and they'll contact you. That's the process. So it's really not saying to people, we are putting calls out for the board. Anybody, any Carlton member who feels that they will have something to contribute, please.
So yet again, it's an example of how they are discouraging, as best they can, any involvement, any interest from any Carlton member other than the ones that they want to invite onto the board. They are discouraging any other person from standing for election. In fact, I can tell you from personal experience that, in fact, you mentioned Joe Abriano before. He's a suburban accountant in Ascot Vale who stood for election a couple of times, going back 10, 12 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, I remember it very well.
When he filled out the forms and did all the right things and submitted it in, he was paid a visit. And it was
Sticks.
The president and one of the board members, and I can tell you at the time that the president was Stephen Kernahan, and Mark Legiudice was, I think, accompanying him, and Joe Abriano was very sternly spoken to about how this would cause the club to lose a lot of money, and that he had literally snowflake's chance in hell of getting up and being elected. And why don't you just pull out now and stop disgracing yourself and stop making an embarrassment out of yourself? Stuff along those lines. I can tell you that even this year, seeing that 6 months ago, this is the other thing about the February AGM, Debbie. 6 months ago is when Bedri Sainovsky had to put in his form. Yeah. And not only did he put in his form back at the end of August of 2021 for the February 2022 AGM and election, 2 other people put up their hand and filled out the forms to be part of this election.
I know one was Trevor Wallard.
And both of those other 2 people pulled out, one pretty quickly, the other one eventually. Why did they pull out? Because of the strong-arm tactics, yet again, of the Independent Nominations Committee, which was less the president on this occasion because he wasn't part of those meetings. Yeah, so you can just see what the real agenda is of this committee.
So, Vince, when I stood twice, the first time they definitely tried to encourage me to withdraw. They soon learnt, though, that I wasn't intimidated by them because I didn't respect them in the first place. So you can't be intimidated by something you don't respect, because I went in there with my eyes wide open, but I was still surprised. And then they were then telling me that other candidates they were encouraging not to stand as well. And so look, that's the 101 technique, is to not have an election in the first place, right? But who are they to decide not to have an election?
Well, this is the point.
Who are they? The members are the ones that
Yeah,
vote.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's correct. But what effectively has happened is that prior to 2014, these people who put their hands up to go on the board were not welcomed as someone. Good on you for putting your hand up. Geez, that's great that you're prepared to volunteer your time, your energy, and your skills for the benefit of the club. Oh, no. You got a visit from a couple of heavies to talk you out of it, right? And made to feel like you should be ashamed of yourself for you're going to be costing the club $40 and $50 and $60,000 and all these sorts of figures bandied around, right? That has now been officially replaced so that you don't need the president and one of his, bouncers to come along with him. Now it's the Independent Nominations Committee who does the same thing. So they call you in to see them on their territory, and then they start to make you feel like you're an absolute moron for putting your hand up. So
absolutely.
They've replaced
white collar. It's very white collar now.
With now it's get a lawyer and an accountant to tell you why you're not needed. By the way, one of those people who they successfully talked out of standing was a very good lawyer and a current Carltonian member. And isn't it interesting how for 20 years plus, they've had QCs and lawyers like Marcus Clark and Simon Wilson. They've all, and the most recent one was Chris Townsend. Oh, we needed legal expertise then. But as soon as Chris Townsend wasn't replaced with another lawyer, guess what they told this particular chap, who is a lawyer? Oh, we don't need any legal experience on our board.
He's not just a lawyer.
That's no longer a required skill set for this board.
He also specialises.
We don't need you. We don't need you. In fact, if you like, what we can do is we'll if you withdraw your nomination, we'll get you to work closely with Paddy Kinnersley, and you can assist her because you're right into inclusion and diversity and all that sort of stuff. So she's into all of that. So how about you just assist her in some sort of unofficial board role? Not a board role, but an unofficial role.
Subcommittee.
Where you can, supplementary role, but you're not on the board. But we'd be happy to use your skills in that area if you like.
He's also an expert.
The main game is withdraw your nomination from the board. That's all they want you to do.
He's also an expert in corporate governance too. He's got lots of skills. Yeah.
Oh, and I can vouch for this guy. He would have been fantastic for the board. But yet another casualty of the strong arm mafia tactics of this board. And
absolutely.
That's essentially what it amounts to. And anyone who wants to challenge me on that, I'm more than happy to take up the challenge.
No, I can talk about it on 2 attempts.
Well, you can talk about it from personal experience because you've done it twice.
Yeah.
And when Debbie goes up and she succeeds next time, we'll make sure that she gets on. Because I'll expose the lot.
I can honestly tell you, Steve, I am with you. I don't get intimidated. I don't get intimidated by anybody, and it's. I've had worse people than that trying to intimidate me, and I don't get intimidated.
Good.
My husband will tell you he has to hold me back sometimes, but no, I don't get intimidated. I'm with you. You can't be intimidated by somebody you don't respect.
Absolutely.
And if they talk to you like that, they don't respect you.
No.
Well, let's go over. I mean, they're the main points I wanted to make. Have either of you two got anything else you wanted to go over in terms of the annual general meeting and the other?
I'll ask you guys a question because I have my own answer. Question was raised regarding using Icon Park as another ground. Okay, I have my own theories, and it's probably not what a lot of people want to hear, but I have my reasons why, and I'll tell you my theory.
Sure.
It's impossible to use that as a ground. There is no infrastructure there. There is no place to park because they're using fields that are used a lot of times during the weekend, during the winter season, as fields that are used for sport. There's a tram. The traffic there to get to there, just along Royal Parade alone, at 5 o'clock at night, can take you an hour just to get from one end of Royal Parade to the ground. So, and because of the university there, because of all the other facilities around there, it would be great if they could, but until there's an infrastructure for parking and for public transport, because there's only a tram, it will never be used as a main stadium. I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd love it, but I don't think so. What do you guys think?
All right,
I think
Steve?
that, the new development was a nail in the coffin for it.
Yeah.
Essentially, then there would you'd need to put an underground car park in, and if you go back to the 1999 election, that day when Carlton beat Essendon by 1 point,
yes,
in the preliminary final,
yes,
with the
who could forget it?
Yep, Cooter.
Cooter
best
show.
on ground. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, that there would have been a link from the Tullamarine Freeway right through there. There would have been an underground car park.
Yes, that's what was needed. Underground car park.
Yep, and that the university would have had access to the underground car park. All the politicking was done for all of that. And then Carlton could have considerably invested further in the stadium to play games there. That election went the other way. Carlton did win the game, though. Went on to lose that grand final to North Melbourne, but and therefore that didn't proceed. You'd need an underground car park. You'd need some investment in the stands, but this development that's gone up hasn't been consulted with the members.
No, not at any stage.
No. And look, it may well be great for football, but that's I believe something this significant should be consulted with members about what the members want or what they want to use the ground for, at least. So that's it's impossible, absolutely impossible. And the new development will have limited seating as well. Just on one more point, Debbie, to add for where we play our games, because I think this is important. In 2014, Mark Lejudice had said that Carlton were aiming to play 7 at the MCG and 4 at Docklands.
Yeah, now it's changed.
Now it's 6 at Docklands and 5 at the MCG. So that's gone the other way, and that's because of essentially Carlton's vulnerability and reliance on cash. But we're out of debt. I thought we were out of debt. But anyway, maybe we're not. That it needs to accept the stadium deal and be told where they play their games. So that the Carlton members, I think, unanimously would want the MCG to have the greater lion's share of that. So look, I've rambled on, but essentially that's your question on the ground and where we play our games, and we've still got no strategy on that as a club at all.
Well, if I was Luke Sayers, I would have gone straight to Brian Cook, who I'm probably paying somewhere around $1 million a year to, and have said, Brian, I need some value for our $3 million on your contract. Make it happen. We did just like you did at Geelong.
It's not.
Give us at least a stadium we can be proud of. It's a patchwork at the moment. It's all over the place. They haven't spent a cent on the Gardner stand. Why won't they make that look a lot more? I guess pleasing to the eye, Steve. Are they hoping to do a particular type of stock take on that stand one day because of its heritage listing?
I think it's the heritage listing. It's the heritage.
Yeah, look, it's a fire trap.
That's what I'm trying to. That's what I was alluding to.
Yeah. Look, I think we need to either restore the Gardner stand to its former glory. And it is the only historical stand now that Carlton has.
Even just a coat of paint, for goodness sake. I mean, really, is it?
Yeah, there's holes. It's really unsafe. That would be great, and I think keeping that there as part of our history would be very, very important. And Debbie talked about the younger generations earlier, like getting those generations to have a seat in that stand, and maybe potentially cast their mind back to what it would have been like to watch games here.
It's so much fun. I loved it. You had to make sure you had something underneath your bum, otherwise you'd get splinters in your bum because of those bloody wooden seats. I loved it.
We can't have that with Debbie's, nice soft,
but the whole atmosphere. I mean, I would love to bring football back to Icon Park, but I just can't see how it's
not going to happen.
Yes, it's a nostalgic. It's a nostalgic sort of wish that most of us would have, but but I think it's gone too far now. I mean,
Too far.
the George Harris stand's all gone. The Robert Heatley stand's gone. Now we've got the old Hawthorn stand, which was eventually renamed the Richard Pratt stand. It's gone. You know, the Elliott stand was renamed the Hero stand. That's another question I had for you, Debbie. What did you think of that question that was asked of Luke Sayers? Are you going to rename the Carlton Hero stand back to the John Elliott stand? Because
I don't think it will.
he was asked that question at the John Elliott Memorial a couple of weeks ago.
I would love to see it renamed like the Serge Silvani stand, not the John Elliott stand. I mean, for me, if you put Johnny Elliott, I know what he did for the club, but I know what he also did for the club.
Yeah.
But I would love to see them rename it the Serge Silvani stand.
Well, look, I'll give Luke Sayers some credit here. I thought he actually made some sense when he said, "I'm not really sure that any of our stands should be named after presidents.
Yes.
They should probably be named after our champion players of the past rather than our administrators and presidents of the board."
And like the Robert Heath,
I thought, you know what, he's probably right there. It should be the Alex Gizelenko stand or the Serge Silvani or the John Nichols and the Stephen Kernahan.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The one thing that always interested non-Carlton people when they used to come to Princes Park was the stands, and they were all administrators.
Yeah.
That they were named after. That was the one thing that
Who's
always
Robert Who's Robert Heatley?
Yes.
You know, who's old Gardner?
Yeah.
The Gardner stand now, named again. These are not players. And
No.
I think that's where, for example, they've got it right at the Adelaide Oval in naming their stands after not just footballers like Gavin Wanganeen, but great cricketers like the Chappells, for example.
Yep.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah.
So I guess that's another discussion for another day. Anything else about the annual general meeting, or any particular questions that were asked on the night that you wanted to raise that
no, not from
you thought are worthy of mention?
No.
I thought we covered it.
Raised here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Debbie, I can't thank you enough for giving us your time tonight and your insights and your opinions on all of the things that we saw and witnessed at the annual general meeting. Before we say goodbye, and thanks again for all of your valuable time, do you want to give us a quick update on what happened at the AFLW game? Because I've got a feeling we might have some good news to tell.
Yeah, we won. We won by 3 goals.
I did predict this, you know.
Did you?
Look away now. Look away now.
Look away now.
The top teams. I said we're playing some of the middle of the road sides, and I reckon we'll have 2 or 3 wins in a row at least.
Yeah, 50-hour fight. That we were the Giants were 5-3-33. We're 7-9-51.
So there you go. So a comprehensive 18-point victory. Probably could have even been more when you look at that.
Yes.
5-3-33 is only 8 scoring shots to 16. So double the amount of scoring shots, winning by 3 goals. We probably kicked it a bit inaccurately there, but especially in the second quarter, we kicked 2 goals to 1, but we scored 2 goals 5 to just the 1 goal straight. And then in the last quarter, 2 goals 1 to the Giants, 1 goal 2. So a comfortable victory. Obviously looked like we were in control for most of that. So the girls have managed to put a couple of wins together, and I think Daniel Harford can breathe a bit more of a sigh of relief, and hopefully all of those vultures that are in social media land that have been coming after his neck might just back off a little bit after a couple of wins.
Does that remind you of the same scenario of what happened? And I think it's absolutely deplorable what they're doing. Absolutely deplorable.
It's as usual. It's almost been ingrained into the Carlton fans' culture almost that they immediately go after the senior coach's head when things are not working out well. I mean, it's not always
the coach,
or it's not just the coach. Even if it's partly the coach, it's not just the one person that's ever the problem.
The coach doesn't tell the player, well, when the ball comes your way, just stand there watching it. The coach doesn't tell you to do that. It's got to be. But if you look at who scored the goals, you had Abby McKay scored 2 goals.
Oh, good on him.
She's
Daughter
not,
of former Carlton champion
usually
Andrew McKay.
Yeah, she's not usually down at the forward line. And, of course, Darcio has become the first AFLW player to score 50 goals.
Oh, wow.
Because she scored 2 tonight. So, yeah.
Well, that's good to see her coming back to a little bit of form. She had lost
she hasn't been
a lot of form in the first half a dozen matches, but she's starting to come good again now.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't mind if I call her she, do you?
Oh, no, hang on. No, Darcy
Sorry.
says they.
They?
They.
Oh, goodness me. Don't get me started. But anyway, forgive me, everyone out there. I'm sorry I called Darcy a she. Sorry. They had a lot better game tonight, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a great
goodness.
game.
I just can't do it. Anyway, Steve, save me, please.
Unfortunately, no. Sorry, not four.
2 games to go. 2 games to go in the AFLW. Melbourne's the last match, and we've got Gold Coast coming up next week. I believe.
Can we steal a spot in the 8 in the top 6? I should say. Or
no chance.
Just asking.
No,
too
I don't
much?
think so. Let me have a look. I don't think so.
Well, at the moment, after 8 rounds, and everyone's played 8 games, so thankfully we can all sort of make a proper comparison. You've got the top 2 teams are on 7 wins out of 8 games. Yeah. The next 3 teams are on 6 wins out of 8 games. So you've got Adelaide followed by Melbourne both on 28 points. Fremantle, Brisbane, and the Kangaroos are all on 24 points. Collingwood just in the top 6, and that's the last finals position. The top 6. So they're in 6th on 5 wins out of 8 games. Then there's a 1.5 game gap to the Western Bulldogs and Gold Coast Suns. Now, is that because of a game that got abandoned?
Wasn't there a draw?
Or was it a draw?
It was a draw.
Might have been a draw.
It was a draw.
I think you're right. It was a draw. So there's a 6-point gap there. And then Carlton and Giants both on 12. So, yeah, we would have to win our last 2 games and improve our percentage by something like 40% and hope that Collingwood lose their last 2. So, yeah, I can't see it happening. Yeah,
no, I can't see it happening either.
Plus, we'd have to beat Melbourne by a big margin, and they're one of the 2 best teams in the league. So, yeah, I think we've just lost too many games at the start of the season. And the best we can hope for is to finish with a win next week against Gold Coast in our final home game at Icon Park, and then finish off with a win against Melbourne by chance. If we can do that, that'd be a big feather in Daniel Harford's cap, and probably give him a bit of hope to hold on to his job. What are your thoughts?
Well, just before you go, so in round 3 there was supposed to be a match between the Gold Coast Suns and the Western Bulldogs, right? But because I think both teams had COVID issues, it was only played on the 22nd of February. That was a drawn match. That was
right. Okay, gotcha then. So right. Yeah.
Personally, I like Daniel Harford. I think he's a good coach. I just think he was when you lose as many players, or if you lose a few good players like Taylor Harris, who I knew was going to go last year when you watched her, and you lose another Hosking, and you lose a few other good players, you knew that it was going to take the Clark team a while to get to some sort of continuity, into some sort of semblance of being a new team, because literally a new team, because some of the players that have stepped in. But the
question I would ask though is some of these top players like Taylor Harris, Katie Loynes, etc. Have they left because of the coach? Because they're not happy with playing under him specifically, or are they unhappy for other reasons, other cultural issues, or other reasons? This is what I'd love to get to the bottom of.
Some people are saying it's because of the coach. I disagree there. I don't think so. It's because of the coach. I just think. No, I won't say anything about what I really think, because I don't think it's the forum for it. But right. I just think sometimes maybe a player doesn't feel as if they're valued enough. Maybe it is a culture.
It does beg the question why. In fact, I wonder why no one asked this at the annual general meeting. Why didn't the club undertake a review of both men's and women's programs rather than just the men's program?
I thought they did. I thought that was
well. If they did, they haven't mentioned anything about it as far as covering the women's program. Have you heard anything about it?
No,
I haven't heard anything about the women's program at all being covered in that review.
I don't. I thought it was both of them because what I thought I read, maybe I should look it up.
You could be right, but I don't recall any real publicity about the women's program. I venture to say that there are just as many issues culturally in that women's program and in the women's side of things as there are in the men's, and that really there ought to have been a more overall comprehensive approach to this when it was handed down last year.
There's been a significant turnover of administrative staff in that program. And that's a statement of fact. And whenever you have that, that is a major worry. Now, the only person that hasn't probably been turned over is the senior coach. So, what, you're going to sack him as well?
I don't think.
In spite of all of that,
I don't think he'll be sacked. I personally don't think he'll be sacked. I think, given look at the assistant coaches. I mean, you've got Kate Simpson there, who I think could be grooming.
Well, a lot of people are calling for Harford to be sacked and put Simpson in his place.
He's not ready. That is the most ridiculous thing to say. Simo is not ready yet. I don't think he's ready. I think he needs to be given at least minimum of 2 years more under a senior coach. He's just not ready. And so do we want to go down the same path of like we did with David Teague of putting in somebody who is maybe not ready yet, starting off okay, and then being hung, drawn, and quartered on social media because they're not performing what everybody thinks they should.
You've got to get the program right behind the scenes. The coaching is just one. Maybe he's 30. I can't quantify it, but he's a percentage of the overall outcome. But if the football program, if the football department isn't correct and the recruiting isn't there, you're limited as a coach with what you can work with.
Yeah.
Well,
I just don't think for Taylor Harris, I don't think I saw her when I watched her play that she didn't want to be there. She put in was back in car. She just didn't want to be there. And I just find that very unprofessional. I don't care if there is a culture. If you play for a team, you play for that bloody team. I just think it's. I mean,
it wasn't just her, Debbie. It wasn't just her. I mean, you had a whole host of them leave. I mean, Alison Downey left to Collingwood. Jess Hosking asked for a transfer to Richmond to join her sister Sarah right at the very last minute. There's all sorts of other examples, not just Taylor Harris.
No.
And that's what worries me, is it's not just a one isolated case. Moving on from that, I think the other thing that's got to be asked is why, and again, this wasn't asked at the AGM, but why was a review commissioned on the basis of it being an external review? Why weren't the details of that review provided to members? They seemed to just cherry pick what they wanted out of it in order to justify the decision that they'd made back in June to sack David Teague. Because in my view, whether that's true or not, as a supporter, I've got every right to believe, considering the non-disclosure of the detail of that review to me as a member, I've got every right to believe that the only reason that you commissioned that review, Mr. Sayers, when you weren't even the president yet, was to give you something that you could fall back on to say, this document's going to justify me sacking the coach.
And not have blood on his hands.
Yeah, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I agree.
You know?
And also I think because he thought, my thing, he thought he could get Alistair Clarkson.
Well, they were quite gung-ho about getting Alistair Clarkson. I can tell you that within 24 hours of announcing that Michael Voss was the coach, they were still trying to convince Alistair Clarkson to change his mind. But then when he went on to, I think it was AFL 360 on Foxtel, and said, look, I'm making a public statement here tonight that I'm not taking that job, that's when they knew, okay, he means that he's even gone public. So now we're going to announce Voss.
I could have told them last year, beginning of last year, that Alistair Clarkson, if he announces his retirement, is not going to coach. He's always said, because my husband's a Hawthorn member and we watch, they have a thing called In the Huddle, and I've been to a few of them, and he has stated categorically that he has said it to his family and to his wife that I owe it to them that when I finish coaching Hawthorn, I will be taking a year off. He has said that every single year. So what makes you think he's going to turn around and not say that?
I'll tell you one thing, Debbie. He had about 900,000 reasons to put his feet up.
Yeah, but look at him now. Yeah, that's right. But now look, now look.
And just sit back and watch for a year. Yeah.
This year, how many teams now are going to have coaches out of contract?
Oh, I know. I mean, the timing of his return by the end of this year will be he will have offers coming left, right, and centre. You watch.
He'll be a spectre above any coach that loses 2 or 3 games in a row.
Correct.
That's out of contract. He'll just be just there hovering.
Or he'll be paid to start the campaign for a team down in Tasmania and be the coach of that.
Yeah. Well, that's another very big chance. I guess that's another discussion for another day.
So why on earth would you want to come to Carlton, really and truly? I mean, it's the most illogical assumption
because when you've already been sacked from one coaching job, it might be the last one you get because you haven't been able to get another one for the last 9 years. So it might be the last bastion. I'll tell you one thing about Michael Voss. And look, don't get me wrong, like any Carlton supporter, I wish him well. I hope he succeeds and I hope we win a premiership under him.
Yeah.
But you know, he's got to go in with eyes wide open. Every other coach that's come to Carlton in the last 20 years, has been unceremoniously sacked prior to the end of their contract or their current contract. And if you don't succeed in the time frame that the board has set out for you to do so, it's going to be your fault. You will be the scapegoat, and you will never again, well, with maybe an odd exception such as Brett Ratton, because it was his first go at Carlton, and he was young enough to get another opportunity, but you will be very unlikely to ever coach another senior team again. It is the poison chalice of the AFL, and it is a career killer and a reputation ruiner.
And
to
also
accept the Carlton coaching senior position.
Also,
whether you like it or not. It's
also
what the facts would say.
The way they're scapegoated is that the board get the members used to the fact that the coach is probably going to be sacked by not supporting them.
Yep.
And then when the board do sack the coach, the members applaud and tell the board what a great job they've done for sacking the coach. Right.
I don't know if you watched the Channel 7 News, but they had Tim Watson did an interview with Michael Voss. And Michael Voss, I mean, I was very hesitant because of the way he was back in Brisbane, but he is under no illusion about what's required and what it's going to take. He said that. He's actually said he's under no illusion. He knows that. He knows what the club is hungry for. He knows what his role is. And, so...
More than anything, I just hope that they support him in the manner that he ought to be supported. I hope that culturally we get our act together at this club.
If they don't do that, I think it's going to backfire on them.
Yeah.
And not on anything else, because they were so gung-ho about getting him and what they wanted to achieve. And if they turn around and they get rid of him, I think it's going to throw big, fat, rotten eggs on their faces.
Well, I can tell you one thing for sure, Debbie. Luke Sayers is president. He's 12 years on the board. His expiry date is October 2024. So he's got 3 seasons ahead of him as president. Brian Cook has signed a 3-year contract. His will come to an end in October 2024, and he'll be off riding into the sunset in retirement at age 70, and with his $3 million for the last 3 years, roughly. I would expect it to be anyway. He's worth it. And Michael Voss will have come to the end of his 3-year contract, And I dare say if we haven't made finals by then, his contract will have been terminated in advance of October 2024. So the three of them have all got about a 3-year period of time to make it all happen as president, CEO, and senior coach. The other question I had that I wanted to quickly canvass was, and I wish the question had been asked, why did Brad Lloyd, as the head of football, as the general manager of the football department, why did he survive
and the others
review
didn't?
When the CEO didn't, the senior coach didn't, just about every assistant other than Luke Power, they were all sacked? Why is the guy actually who's in charge of this football department, who has failed so miserably, why did he get to keep his job? And then, by the way, there's nothing personal against Brad Lloyd. He's probably a nice guy. But this is purely business. If you're going to survive a review, why did he survive that review? Yet again, no explanation, no upfront provision of an explanation for the members.
Well,
surely
the CEO,
that's an obvious question that should have been asked and should have been answered.
But the CEO got sacked because they could get Brian Cook. That's why he got sacked.
I also think he
really
got sacked. I think he got sacked because he stepped on too many toes and went into too many departments that was none of his business.
But I also believe, my understanding is he also got sacked because his focus was purely on the financial, off-the-ground side of things, and that he had neglected in a big way to oversee the football department and to at least hold Brad Lloyd to account. And this is one of the things I don't understand. He's lost his job because the football department failed. The CEO did. But the guy who's running the football department survived. So I can't make any sense of that. And the other one is, of course, Andrew Russell, the guy who's paid an absolute fortune to be in control of our fitness and high performance area. I mean, yet again, here we are with injuries again. Sam Walsh has gone down, and Harry Mackay's gone down, and
I disagree with blaming Andrew Russell, and I'll tell you why.
No, but what I'm saying is I believe the only reason why Andrew Russell survived is purely because he has another contract for another year, and it would have been far too expensive to sack him and then have to pay another person on top of that. It would have been just unrealistic to expect to pay for all that. So therefore, they've kept him on for his final year. I don't expect Andrew Russell will be here in 12 months.
You don't think so?
No.
Interesting.
And the other thing that I believe was highly inappropriate was that the exit interviews at the end of the year, not only last year but the year before, were done by Andrew Russell, not the senior coach. How does that work? Again, Brad Lloyd ought to be asked the question, how do you allow this to happen? You're in charge of the football department. How do you get the fitness guy to do exit interviews with players instead of the senior coach? That's just weird beyond belief. But anyway, these are all questions that never got asked, never got answered. But we'll continue to pose them here on Blue Sunday. And as I said about 15 or 20 minutes ago, Debbie, thank you so much for your time. We've gone 2 hours.
That's my pleasure, gentlemen. And I was glad I could make it this time.
We hope to get you back on the show again in the not too distant future. You're always welcome, you know that.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
The only thing I'm a bit upset about is that you should have been in the middle on these three headshots here, because you're the rose in between. You're the rose in between the thorns. You can hardly describe me as a rose, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There you are. Steve's fixed it. Finally.
Good night, gentlemen.
All the best, Debbie.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you. Now, I believe Joe Lutzer was going to come back and give us his 2 bobs worth, and there he is.
I've been sitting in the background. Listening. I put up a message.
Of all of that? Have you got anything you'd like to add or like to express?
No, not really. I'm just, but my predicament. I didn't get invited to the AGM, and when I wrote to the membership department, their view was, "Oh, well, bad luck. Sorry about that. But you 3 people in your party haven't paid yet. When are they going to pay?" So, so I intend to write a letter this week to the CEO and the board about it. But
we put up a couple of your comments that you wrote up for us before.
About the related party transactions. Well, look, I remember when I was an auditor at Price Waterhouse, and even when I was an internal auditor, they were really, really, really strict on those related party transactions. So for them not to be, and I trust Steve because I know he would have gone through the AGM with a fine-tooth comb, but for them not to have been put up in the notes is bordering on criminal, to be honest. But you know, one thing I don't think that this problem is endemic only at the Carlton Football Club. I think it's at a lot of clubs. That we probably don't know what happens at Essendon and Collingwood and stuff like that. But I'm sure they have the same sort of dilemmas. You saw Collingwood last year; they were all fighting amongst themselves when Eddie used to put his mates up. But my question is, these people who come onto the board, who's this lady that has just come on?
I was just going to raise this. In fact, we probably should have done it before we said goodbye to Debbie. Lara Carey, who's the director of the club now.
I'd like to know, Lara. One, are you a member? Two,
she has to be a member for 2 years.
She had to be a member to get on the board. She had to be a member for 2 years.
Yeah. But that's easy. Well, what does she know about the club? I'd really like to know what she knows about the club, because these are not paid positions, are they? On the board,
not meant to be. No. not meant to be.
Okay, so it's a labour of love, really, and prestige.
Meant to be. Meant to be.
I know, but my view is, to these people, it's become a play toy, and you've got these influential people putting people on the board that they can manipulate or that they know that they can influence, which to me, the AFL, that they say they run the game. Okay. So realistically, what role do they play in these sort of positions? I know the club can say, look, butt out.
So Joe, the AFL strongly wanted the independent nominations committee to come into a lot of football clubs. Of course, the clubs themselves have to determine what the independent nominations committee would consist of, but they have strongly pushed for an INC, and the AFL want the type of board member that the AFL want on boards, so that those people will not fight City Hall. They will not challenge.
Want compliant. They want compliant board members who are never going to fight
go
the AFL.
rogue. Yeah,
but I still question about these people, like Paddy Kinnersley or whatever. I don't even know half their names, right? But I haven't even heard her say one thing about the AFLW program.
Yep.
Good, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. Never heard her come out in defence of the coach a couple of weeks ago. Or I don't know if that's under Brad Lloyd's domain.
But you see, the annual general meeting, Joe, don't you think that is the forum at which all of the board members should be putting themselves up in front of the members and available to be questioned and even make a presentation if they want to? I mean, Paddy was going up for re-election. I think she should have, in advance of the election, been put up by the board to make a case for why she should be re-elected. And
that would have been smart marketing.
And how we're going with the AFLW program. But none of it. Nothing. Zero.
But I'm very critical of the club, and I have been for years, even though I live here in Bangkok. Like I've told you this before, Vince. I pay $1,000 a year, basically. I buy a captain's club membership, which in the last 2 years I haven't used. No one has, right?
Yeah.
I pay basically $1,000 and I come to see 2 games.
Yeah.
Right? In those, I've been a member of the football club since easily 1970, when you used to go to the newsagent and buy the paper thing, and remember they used to clip your ticket. They never knew your details, right?
Yep.
In all the years I've been a member of that club, I have never, ever, ever once received one piece of email other than please pay your bill. Never. Do you think we are who would buy Carlton merchandise? Carlton supporters.
Well, you know the only way to make that happen, Joe?
But
I'll tell you the only way to make it happen.
I've done it so many times, Vince.
No.
I don't pay my membership.
I am not renewing my membership.
Yep.
I'm more than happy to renew my membership when you put me on your database and prove to me that I'm on it.
I do that to them every year. And the person at the other end of the thing says, yeah, we've done it. I'll never forget, I cracked the shits. This is the last time I was in Australia. It was 3 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I came over and I remember I said to my then girlfriend, I said, just come with me. I want to go to the club. Thai people don't like arguments and stuff. And I went to the club and I asked to see the membership manager, right? I'm sorry, the membership manager's busy. I said, that's fine. I'm here for 2 weeks. I'm prepared to wait. And they looked at me and they said, sorry. I said, well, there's a cafe over there. I'm just going to sit in the cafe. I'll wait till this person's free. Oh, this person's in meetings all day. I said, yeah, but I think this person does actually go home at night. So I'll walk with them to the car. Miraculously, in 15 minutes' time, some guy came down and spoke to me and he said, oh, I'm the membership manager. What's your problem?
Was that Daniel Geese? Was that Daniel Geese, was it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I told him my problem. You know what his first words to me were? Oh, I don't give a shit. I'm not really a Carlton supporter. This is a job to me. And I said, okay, that's fine. I don't care who you support. And it is
there's a wonderful display of great culture at the club, Steve.
And then I thought to myself, and if it is your job, then do what you're paid to do. Oh, well. And then his next comment was, oh, you need to understand, mate, not even sir or... He said, you need to understand, mate, we got 60,000 members. Do you think I can look after every single one of them? And I said, probably not. But your job is, I'm standing here now. How hard is it for you to go to your computer and actually type in my name? Oh, don't you think I've got better things to do? I said, well, then I'm not paying my membership. He said, well, then you won't get then you'll have a break in continuity and I can't guarantee your seat and blah, blah, blah. Everything was my fault. Nothing was their fault. And in the end, I just went, you know what? Can't be bothered. It's too hard.
I don't think we need to add anything further to that. That just speaks for itself, doesn't it? Hey?
But you know, even my nephews and nieces who are members, who, oh, Uncle Joe, can you buy me a scarf? Can you buy me a hat? Do you think that ever once that the club would go, this month we have a special on hats, buy your niece or Carlton supporter a hat? No. When I ring the club, their suggestion is, we suggest you either come to the club store, right, or go to Rebel Sport where you can buy official merchandise. I want to give you the money. I want to give the club the money. Yeah, well, we don't. That's not really our area. Our area is football membership. But let's not promote it. Well, let's just push everything off to someone else. And I don't know what that guy got paid. I'm sure he would have been on 40 or 50K a year in those days, right? So it's not like it's a menial clerk's job somewhere, like membership manager. You know, as you guys have been in business, as you know, the hardest thing in business is not to attract customers, but to retain them.
Yep.
Right? Because you can always go by lists to get customers.
No doubt.
But
and you've spent so much, and there's been so much investment to attract that customer in the first place, and then you just go and blow it straight away after that. But I've always said that, you know, Carlton members are members.
It just turns over.
Sorry, I meant, well, they're meant to be treated like members. They're treated at best like customers, and even then, they don't really treat you properly, even if you are just treated like a customer. Is it any wonder why people walk away in droves?
But there's a guy in my building, he's about 3 floors down. He's a Geelong member, right?
Yeah.
Every week he gets something. Every week, without fail.
Yeah.
Injury updates, specials.
Well, hopefully, Joe, we've got the Geelong CEO at Carlton now. Hopefully we can start seeing some of these things implemented here.
Don't know. But anyway.
Oh, well.
No, that's my 20 cents worth.
Thanks for joining us on that.
No, that's all right. Hey, just to let people know that from next week, this is purely going to be the Steve and Vince show, and it's going to solely focus on football.
Purely on AFL football and purely on Carlton. Yep.
Predominantly Carlton. I'm sure.
Predominantly Carlton, but we'll also discuss other AFL issues. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure if there's big breaking issues, like drug scandals or stuff like that. Yeah. I'm sure young Steve is got his nose in the papers.
On the subject
not always of just a golf, is it?
Well,
Steve?
on the subject of drug scandals, Joe, we sort of almost had one during the week when our esteemed new board member from 6 months ago, who'd been parachuted into the Carlton board, Lara Carey, didn't exactly receive the most glorious publicity during the week for someone whose specialty is meant to be public relations.
Hey,
and was seen to have been advising a particular CEO who was caught taking what was he doing? Smoking a bong or something like that. What happened there, Steve? Do you want to tell us what happened?
There was it was a scandal. Allegedly, there was a scandal where former CEO was of a major company.
Grilled.
Yes. Yep. You've been there a few times.
Yes.
Burgers.
Yeah. Was caught in a compromising position, shall we say, underdressed. To say the least. Underdressed and also allegedly smoking some form of
methamphetamine
pipe of some sort. Who knows what was in it?
Purely for recreational purposes.
Yeah.
Purely.
Yeah. Then from there was the whole crisis management piece that occurred, as they call it in PR world, where they do reputation restoration and damage control to ensure that things can be salvaged out of the wreck and that individual's reputation can sort of take a small hit, but in the long term recover again. So that was what had occurred. But of course, one of the photographs was claimed to have been taken overseas, but
in South
this
Africa.
person did buy a home in a southern suburban Melbourne around that time. And I don't know if you went on one of the websites, Domain or realestate.com.au or wherever you need to go, but some of the fixtures and fittings look very similar to that home that was purchased.
Stephen. Pure coincidence.
Hey, all publicity is good publicity.
Oh, look, honestly, you couldn't have had. And the crazy part about it is that, the sad part is that probably the average Carlton member doesn't know or care, but yet again, it points to the culture at the Carlton Football Club and the way this board operates, that they parachute people like Lara Carey in, who sold her company to two Carlton directors, LeGiudice and Matheson. All of a sudden, that company starts doing business with the Carlton Football Club and starts deriving revenue from the Carlton Football Club. What then happens? The former director, Lara Carey, who they bought the company off, gets parachuted into a board position. I'm sorry, but where I come from, that stinks to high heaven. Okay? And this is the sort of web of connections that Luke Sayers has. And these are the people that he's going to continue. These are the types of people he's going to continue to parachute into the board in the next 2 or 3 years, because eventually, you might have even someone like a David Campbell step off because he can't even go onto a committee to select the coach anymore, despite being skilled in people and culture, apparently. And there'll be other board members who'll probably, I think Craig Matheson's term is probably up in about 12 months or so. So there's another one that has to be replaced by someone who's going to represent the interests of his uncle Bruce, because that's how it works. Everyone that's on the Carlton board is there to represent some sort of corporate interest and benefactors and some of the families that actually control the club. Probably the only two board members that I can think of that don't would be Greg Williams, purely because he's there for the football side of things, and Paddy Kinnersley, because she's also there for the football side of things for the women. Other than those two, who are there for football reasons, all the other 6 are there to protect the corporate interests of themselves and the families that they represent.
And so be it.
And even though we saw 4 board members change 6 months ago, nothing's really changed, mate. No. Nothing at all. And if only people could understand that, they might start to understand how this club works. Anyway,
well, on that note, there's only about 15 days to go, something like that. 15
days to go until what?
The start of the season?
No, well, I think the first game is on the 16th.
Okay.
So I think we might have about 18 days to go. But
yeah,
Carlton's first match is on St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March.
And
let's hope it's St. Patrick Cripps' day, because his birthday's the following day. He'll be 27 the day after we play Richmond. So based on that practice match that we saw the other day, I don't know if you guys saw it. I was there. Cripps looks really good.
Yeah, we saw you, Vince. Yeah, we saw you.
Patrick Cripps looks really good.
We saw you mingling with a few people.
Yes. I had no idea the cameras were on.
Steve and I, we have our spies everywhere. We saw you accept the brown paper bag.
I'll sue you for libelous comments and defamation of character, Joe.
I just want to know, did it have a peanut butter sandwich or a Vegemite sandwich in that bag?
All right, my friend. Great to see you.
See you guys.
Steve and I will wrap up with 10 minutes of what's going on in sport around the world before we close off on our summer edition. So, Stevie, let's just quickly cover this. Golf, last week we saw the Genesis Open at the beautiful Riviera Golf Club there just outside of Los Angeles at Pacific Palisades. You were right, my friend. You predicted that Joachim Niemann would hold on, and in fact he did with a score of 19 under par. I think he only scored a par round of 71 in his final round, but it was still good enough to hold on. So Niemann from Chile happened to win over a couple of other Americans, being Colin Morikawa and Cameron Young, who finished on 17 under, a couple of shots back. And how good was it that our own fantastic champion Australian golfer Adam Scott finished in equal 4th position on 14 under, some 5 shots back, along with Victor Hovland from Norway. That was a tremendous final round by Adam Scott.
He plays well. He plays well at that course, and it is, as we've mentioned, is one of his favourites as well, because it does remind him of Australia. Starting to hit some form again, Adam Scott. He just needs that little bit more.
You know that second half of the third round where I told you last week he dropped about 4 shots in that second half. The outgoing
back 9.
Sorry, the back 9. Yeah. If it wasn't for those 4 shots he dropped there, he would have been literally, going neck and neck with Niemann for the victory. Based on what he did in the final round. It was a really good final round score too by Adam Scott. So other Australians that were in the field, in fact, we did really well in that tournament. I know Mark Leishman and Matt Jones both finished tied for 15th on 8 under. Cameron Smith, another good tournament, finished tied for 33rd on 5 under, even though he was 14 shots behind. Still a good 4 rounds for him. And Cameron Davis finished tied for 48th on 3 under. So a great tournament there. And we've got another one happening at the moment, but unfortunately only 3 Aussies started the tournament, and 2 of them got knocked out at the cut. And there's only 1 left. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I haven't got the scores right in front of me.
Well, I've got them here. How's that? It's the Honda Classic, of course.
Of course.
Beautiful Palm Springs down there in Florida.
Yeah, Palm Beach.
Palm Beach, is it? Sorry.
Palm Beach, yeah. It's a tough golf course too. Very, very tough golf course.
And Daniel Berger's in front on 11 under par. He's a 5-shot leader at the end of the third round over 4 other players who were on 6 under. So he looks like, something would have to go dramatically wrong for him not to win. The only Aussie being Brett Druitt. He's at 1 over par, and he's therefore 12 shots behind the leader.
Yeah, Berger's looking really good. It's his tournament to lose. It is a tough golf course, but he's making it look quite easy, actually, the way he's playing. Be hard to see anyone beating him from here, but stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened. So I think that probably, I'm not sure who's going to win, but I think Berger will end up holding on in the Honda Classic. Have we got any other notable tournaments coming up in golf?
Well, working towards...
See, this is our last summer edition, so we're not going to cover it from week to week unless there's a real big one coming up.
Yeah, so the tour will head more to it's obviously in that Florida region, but it'll start to work its way a little further north, and they'll be looking towards the US Masters. That'll be that's the first official major. So that's normally around Easter time. I haven't got the exact date for that off the top of my head, but
the US Masters will be a week before Easter this year. I think what you'll find is that it's April 7 through to 10, so that'll be the week before Easter this year. Obviously at Augusta National Golf Club in Augusta, Georgia. So April 7 through to 10 for the Masters. Prior to that, they call it the fifth major, don't they? But it's known as the Players' Championship. That's another big tournament. March 10 through to 13. So that's coming up in less than 2 weeks' time. Yeah, that'll be a big one.
Yeah, and that's the TPC at Sawgrass, and it's got obviously that famous, iconic Island 17th hole green there. I love that. Just a wedge or a 9-iron, but it's pretty nervy.
How many players get the ball in the water there? Talk about intimidation.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there was no water there, it would
get it
be
on
no
the green
problem
every time, wouldn't you? Yeah.
But it's just the mental component of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And, we've even seen some players get holes in one there over the years. So it's always worth watching the 17th every time. And it's a fantastic golf course, isn't it? The Sawgrass golf course there in Ponte Vedra Beach in Florida, in beautiful Florida.
Jacksonville, Florida.
The American equivalent of Queensland.
So that's in the northern part of Florida compared to Palm Beach or Miami, which is more down the bottom there. So they head up there towards Georgia for the Masters in April.
Yeah, and of course next week we've got the Arnold Palmer Invitational presented by MasterCard at the Bay Hill Club and Lodge in Orlando, Florida. So we're spending a few weeks in Florida by the looks of it. That's also got a big prize.
Another great course. Lots of water around there on that course as well. So
how's the money? Hey, $12 million US, prize money for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. $20 million for the Players' Championship in March at Sawgrass, and of course, the Masters. What's that worth? That'd have to be worth every bit of same sort of money, shouldn't it? 20 million?
That's around the 20 million overall, but it's obviously not just the event; it's all the additional benefits of winning their Masters that come with it.
No doubt. And
it's a smaller field too, so that's only an invitation field opposed to the full 144 players.
Yeah. And then, of course, in May 19 to 22, we've got the PGA, the other major tournament, the US PGA Championship, which will be held at Southern Hills Country Club in Tulsa, Oklahoma this year.
That's right. A great golf course, Southern Hills. They've held many a tournament there before, it gets windy. It gets windy in Oklahoma. It can be challenging, and it also gets very humid.
And interesting that the reigning champion there is Phil Mickelson, and he seems to have rustled a few feathers recently with some of his comments about this potential breakaway group that might might be formed and taken away from the US tour.
He's just lost another 2 sponsors. So Callaway, his equipment sponsor, have dropped him, and Workday, which is a sort of an HR program, a software program, they've also dropped him. So look, you can't look. I'll be honest. The PGA Tour, the US PGA Tour, you cannot commit any treacherous or treasonous acts there. Otherwise, you are persona non grata.
It just goes to prove the old adage: loose lips sink ships, and they also sink pockets. Oh, he's going to find out the hard way, Phil. But he's probably made enough money out of the game.
No, he'll make enough out of the
he'll go
new
to the
tour.
Seniors tour just about soon, wouldn't he?
Absolutely, and he'll make enough playing on that other tour from an appearance fee perspective to cover himself anyway.
And the last of the US majors, of course, is the US Open, which will be in June 16 to 19 at the Country Club in Brooklyn, Maryland, I think it is.
Massachusetts. Brookline.
Massachusetts.
Brookline.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Beautiful
course.
And
John Rahm, the number 1 player in the world, is the reigning champion there.
Yep. Yeah, beautiful course, that one.
And, of course, don't forget the final, major tournament. I was about to say Grand Slam, but they don't call them Grand Slams in golf, do they? The final major tournament around the world is, of course, the Open Championship, which is often called the British Open. And, of course, I'm rapt about this. It's going to be held at the old course at St Andrews in Scotland, the home of golf, the original itself, July 14 to 17. Cannot wait for that.
Yeah, it's
so much history, so much tradition.
Absolutely, and it just goes to show when you see that course on TV, it doesn't look as difficult as what it actually is.
Oh yeah,
but all the undulations
when the wind's howling in Scotland, and it's about -2 degrees, and you see all the players rugged up in jumpers and beanies and looking like bears rather than looking like golfers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But anyway, it is a great course, and let's just hope that the weather does serve up some variety over the 4 days, because you don't want it to be, totally calm. But let's hope it doesn't totally spoil the scoring, because you do want to see some good scoring from the best in the world, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, it's a sort of course that you can make your fair share of birdies, but the road hole, for example, on 17 in the bunker and so forth on that road hole, a lot of people have fallen victim to some of the challenges of St Andrews. So, looking forward to that tournament.
All right. Well, I'm not going to bother with other sports like tennis and soccer or anything else tonight. In terms of soccer, what we do look forward to is a big match this morning coming up between Chelsea and Liverpool for the League Cup title. So that should be a great match at Wembley Stadium, the traditional League Cup. There are still FA Cup matches coming up soon, so we will see that culminate in May. So we won't be covering all of these other sports now that the football season's about to start here in Australia. We'll just concentrate our show purely on the AFL and specifically on Carlton Football Club. So we hope you've enjoyed the summer edition version of our show over the last, probably 4 months since the start of October. Is it 4 or 5 months? It's from October, November, December, January, February. So
we had
5
a break.
months.
We had a small break over Christmas.
We had a small break in the middle of it, But over the last 5 months, we've tried to bring you a comprehensive coverage of the major sports that are going on around the world, and especially those that are of interest to us here in Australia. So, Stephen, it's been about 2.5 hours, a monster program, a lot to get through. We thank Debbie Peltier again for her contribution tonight, and Joe Lutzer. And, mate, we'll look forward to seeing you next week for the full-on football edition of Blue Sunday here on In the Blue Corner channel. Have a good week, mate.
Thanks, Vince. Look forward to it. See you next week.